fact alive. I'm in Italy for a couple months, and yeah, I guess life right now hasn't been conducive to doing a YouTube channel regularly. It's like too public, but yeah, I'm alive. I did go to a museum recently and saw an exhibit of Russian Orthodox icons, which were so beautiful. And like the atmosphere that it created, even out of their proper context of like being in a church, was really palpable. And the way that that art form creates a world or creates an underlying symbolic structure for the world, or for a world, I guess for the Christian world. I have had a cold. I got one the first week that I was here, and then got over that in about a week and a half. It was really annoying, sore throat for days. And then about 2 weeks later, I got another one, and I've been coughing and like congested for 2 weeks. My arm's gonna start hurting from doing this. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so Russian icons. And also I have been watching, well, I've just fallen into the rabbit hole of the Maze Runner and like that fandom. I don't know, the like YA genre seems to have a soft spot for those stories. Maybe because they're not too like, okay, my hand is tired. Maybe because they're not too like serious or like good art, and so they're easy to watch as a sort of escapism, and that seems to be like a pattern with, at least with me, that if you start from a place of not taking something too seriously, whether it's watching media or like writing a story or creating art, then that's like where the really good stuff ends up coming from, because you aren't being too precious about it. And from that, yeah, the point is, Hunger Games, soft spot; Twilight, soft spot; Maze Runner, all I've been doing is like making fan art, and it's interesting because it's, you know, the story objectively is, it's not great art, you know. It's very cliche. It's not amazingly written, but I sound like my older half sister. I'm always very conscious of like what my voice sounds like, or like what accent I'm doing. Anyway. But there's a fandom for the Maze Runner, and so a bunch of people who just like love it wholeheartedly. And in that environment of like unconditional love and detention slash worship, in Jonathan Pageau's definition, being just lavished onto this story, it starts to gain a resonance and feel like it's like really good. Oh man, I didn't write a script for this. video. I really need scripts for my videos. Yeah, so I guess this is like, I've kind of laid out these ideas in other contexts before. The other reason why I'm not regularly making videos is because I just kind of, as far as like the objective content of my thoughts or whatever, it's kind of the same thing over and over again. But it's like experiencing it or whatever. Look at him. So perfect. Perfect blend of like representation and abstraction. Oh, lovely. Anyway, just like I've talked about, like, I guess this has to do with like the whole like internal things developing an internal gravity, and sort of integrity of their own, and also the environment that something it develops in is what it develops out of. I don't know. And like, you know, if it's an environment of constant critique, then nothing can really survive, even if it is objectively good. Like if you're just throwing critique at it all the time, that's not like the way that things need to exist. But you know, on the other side of that spectrum is something like the Maze Runner fandom, where you have a bunch of people just like loving and like obsessing over a story that's, you know, just kind of a story, and making it into something more than it is, you know, on its own. And that's beautiful to see. And it's nice to see how that can happen, because when I'm, you know, making my art, I'm all like worried and perfectionist about how good it is from an artistic point of view. But what matters more than that is just how loved it is, honestly. Which, I mean, I wish that all books had fandoms like that. And especially like it's funny which like franchises become popular and which ones don't. For instance, Adrian Tchaikovsky's sci-fi novels, brilliant, original, like incredible characters, and there's like 3 people talking about these books. It's such a shame because it's such like good fandom material, but oh well. Anyway, yeah, so I was gonna connect, there's some connection between the Maze Runner thing and the icons. Oh yeah, so this idea of like, you take a certain entity, and wherever we start out, like, you put that into the environment of love, support, and attention, and it will then die a flower and grow. Obvious seed, ground, plant analogy. Why is my accent like this all of a sudden? Because I've been speaking Italian, and then I've been speaking like in a British accent to these kids, because it's fun, and also it's Europe, so they want a British accent. And I don't normally get to do my accent because it's not very good or consistent. But yeah, so maybe I don't know how to. I've lost track of what my American voice is supposed to sound like. Anyway. What that sort of process you can see with the Maze Runner fandom, and what it has made of the original books and stories and characters, between the fan art and the fan fiction, and just people's lives being intertwined with the story, until it gains this resonance and quality of like being shining, and a more extreme version of the same pattern is what's going on to me with the icons. because you have this one story and narrative thread of, Christ's life and everything that ties into that, like the prophets and the other figures. But you have in a sense this one life, and just hyper focusing on that, and drawing out every aspect of it and connecting every aspect of it to something else, and making that the heart of this entire architecture and structure and world, and the symbols, and repeating the same familiar events, like the Annunciation and the Resurrection and Crucifixion, until they become really such deep symbols and so abstract, not in a negative sense, but in the sense that it's almost like an equation that outlines a universal pattern. It's the same kind of symbolic, like metaphysical, like depth. And I don't know, yeah, it's the same to me. Being in that room with all of those beautifully painted, like just stunningly detailed and really bright and colorful and everything, icons. It's amazing to me. I'm thinking like, wow, like this is a possibility in the world, kind of. Reality can lay itself out that way, or we can lay out reality that way, with so much attention and order and harmony, and it's just like so much love that you feel concentrated in those drawings and depictions, which have become refined and universalized over the centuries, with so many people's lives being poured in. It is just really beautiful. If you're like, I don't even know what my channel audience is anymore. Maybe some of them are Orthodox related. If so, I'm definitely a heretic from many angles, so I don't apologize, but whatever. Anyway, this overall pattern of like taking something and not caring so much whether it's objectively good or whatever by itself, but like putting it into, dang, I really need to read Tradition and Apocalypse because I know this is relevant. I know it's relevant to all of this. Anyway, putting that into like a setting of love and detention / worship, and then that can develop and deepen endlessly, and you see that with like a child growing up. You see it with a seed growing into a plant. You see it with a book that has this fandom, and you see it with religious iconography and symbolism, and the structure of a faith that can support an entire world.